This is 3 minutes. Sorry. Okay. A piece, man. Okay. So, yeah, I got to just tell you guys, the first year I spoke at Pt3, and somebody wanted to give me a signal for like a time thing. She went like this. And I thought she was going, loser. They'll never have me back. Okay. Well, we'll wrap this one up and then we'll take a break. Unity, very important. Very important that there is not an untrainer in the family. Okay, somebody's trying to manage the fearfulness at home, not expose the dog to a certain thing, and then you get the one family member who goes, it's fine, that's a bunch of crap. That's a problem. Okay, so we want to have everybody on the same page. It's not a bad idea to have house rules, and especially when there's kids around also, that you can have them write out, things like the dog must wear the drag line, or, we do not go through this door when the dog is right there. Whatever it is for that particular dog, write them out, and they can post them somewhere, like on the refrigerator, and that's just the house rules. Everybody goes over it together, and everybody knows to follow it. Safety and management, again, don't expose the dog to the thing for 2 weeks if possible. I know this is real life, but if possible, before you start your behavior modification program. And if it's something like a fear of strangers, if they're getting like a delivery, let's say, a lot of people get deliveries all day long for their home business, I want the dog somewhere else. I don't want the dog getting that rush of adrenaline and other stress hormones every time somebody comes to the door and there's a conflict. So we're going to take a 20-minute break. Okay, we're going to be back. Everybody settle. Come on. I'm losing my voice, sorry. I can't yell. Okay. I know that you guys know most of what's on the screen right now. I am not going to take very much time going through this at all. Okay? We all know classical conditioning. We're pairing things together. We're creating an association. We are trying to create a conditioned emotional response, which you'll sometimes see as CER, right? I do think that it's important to mention that counter-conditioning is something that is very often misunderstood by trainers, or they think it's called something else, or they think that counter-conditioning is actually training an incompatible behavior, which is not what counter-conditioning is. Training an incompatible behavior is DRI, differential reinforcement of an incompatible behavior, I think Gene Donaldson calls it. But counter-conditioning is basically, if you think of it as a subset of classical conditioning, you are trying to make a good association between things where the dog already has a negative association with something. Okay? So it's the same thing. It's classical conditioning, but the dog already has a negative association with something. I wanted to skip down because I know you guys know this and we've talked about some of this. Habituation is where the dog, through repeated exposures, becomes okay with something. That can work, and it certainly does work for a lot of dogs who have just not received early socialization. Dogs where it's a mild fear, right? Just being around it, just deal with it. It's cool. It's fine. It happens with new people in the home sometimes. They're living there. You're going to have to deal with them. Sometimes the dog will just come around. You cannot habituate a dog with a severe fear. It's not recommended. Sensitization is where the dog's reaction becomes stronger over repeated exposures. It's also important to understand that it may not be just the thing that the dog is afraid of. The dog may then generalize it out. Okay? Like if you were walking through a haunted house and something jumped out and scared you, you would be all of a sudden on guard, but not just on guard to things that are jumping out. Every little noise, everything would make you afraid. So dogs can become more and more sensitized to things. Flooding means that you are basically exposing the dog to the thing that the dog is afraid of in a way that is absolutely overwhelming. The idea behind the theory being that eventually the dog is exhausted and not reacting any longer, and then somehow the dog's going to be okay with it. I am not saying that flooding does not work in laboratory conditions, okay, with other animals as well. However, I am saying that it has absolutely no place in pet dog training, okay, especially with pet owners doing it with their own dogs. An example of flooding might be Oh, let's say a dog had a fear of the toaster. And you took the toaster and you held the dog with one hand and you shoved it in the dog's face with the other. That's an example of flooding. It's also an example of stupidity. Okay? It's true. Because what is that teaching the dog? Is the dog now not going to be afraid of the toaster? No. He's going to be afraid of the toaster. He's going to be afraid of you as well. Okay? So we want to present the dog with the trigger, the thing that he's afraid with, in a very, very gradual manner so that he can be okay with it. With flooding, you really do chance really destroying the relationship between the dog and the owner. And for a fearful dog, that's a horrible thing to do. That can be a death sentence for that dog. I did want to mention one more thing before we get into the protocol design. Somebody had mentioned about tricks, dogs doing tricks, and I will say that that is actually also one of the things that I use. When owners are teaching tricks, in general, they have a light demeanor. Everybody's happy. If you do group classes where you teach tricks, all of a sudden, instead of sit, down, stay, now we've got shake, roll over, okay? And so because the whole demeanor of the owner is different, it really helps a lot for the dog to do the tricks. And plus, it's just more stuff. It's all tricks to them anyway, isn't it? Sit down, stay, roll over, whatever it is, it's all tricks to them. So the more that's in that dog's repertoire and the more that dog can do, all the better. You also have tricks as an alternate behavior. If the dog is, afraid of someone, hey, go get your ball, okay? Go get your ball. Gives the dog something to do, gets it away from the person. And we'll talk about that with fear of visitors. So protocol design, we're going to identify the trigger. We're going to identify not only the trigger, but the components of the trigger. Now, when you are manipulating variables, you want to make sure that when you make one variable more difficult for the dog, you make something else easier. So what are variables? It depends on the fear. Obviously, if you have something, it's a dog who's noise sensitive, it's something that the sound can be made louder. Let's say it's a stereo recording of something, right? That's a variable. How loud is the sound? Obviously, if you can't manipulate that, you can manipulate it by the dog's distance from the sound, right? You also have motion. How fast is something moving? What direction is something moving? If the dog is afraid of other dogs, there's a million variables. Okay? Is he only afraid of dogs with prick ears? Is he only afraid of big white dogs like Soko was afraid of white, big dogs for a while because she had a traumatic experience, right? Is that dog coming right towards you? Is it only dogs on leashes? Is it only dogs who are off leash? It doesn't, there's so many different things. Duration of a variable would be turning something on like a vacuum cleaner, let's say, for 1 second, for 3 seconds. Intensity of it can be intense because of the distance. Intensity can be petting. So let's say the dog is afraid of being handled. So a little, hand on here is one thing. Doing this all down the dog is another. It's a lot more intense. We are actually going to take a look at, do you guys all have the manipulating variables handout? It's in your handouts. It's in the spiral. It looks like this. This is actually based on something that I did with a client's dog. This is this dog's real name, by the way, Widget, which is really cute for a terrier, isn't it? Okay, Widget is a terrier who is actually afraid of the sound of the air conditioning unit and the heating unit. These people live in a 2-story home, and the air conditioning unit itself is at the top of the stairs. And we're not going to spend much time on this, but I want you to have it. The main thing I want you to look at, and by the way, with this, where it says this many feet away and how long the unit is on, you are actually, and because this is excerpted from the book, it doesn't explain all this, it explains in other parts of the book, you're actually counter-conditioning at the same time. You're actually feeding treats when the air conditioning unit is on, and you are stopping them when the air conditioning unit is off. Okay, we're creating a good association with the sound of it. So we're starting, you're actually down at the bottom of the stairs, right? And it says distance from stairs, like 3 feet distance from stairs. And again, this is just a slice of this protocol. It doesn't, I have to tell you guys that a good friend of mine actually was the editor for my fear book. And when she read this, she kept thinking that 3 feet away from the bottom of the stairs meant that the dog was 3 feet up the stairs. And so for anybody else who might be thinking that, that's not it. It's actually 3 feet back, like there's the stairs and here's me, okay? So you're 3 feet back. The client is up at the top of the stairs, actually. turning the thing on and off. And it goes on for 1 second. You feed treats. It goes off. You stop feeding treats. You're doing this at 3 feet, and you're building up the time very gradually. There's many, many ways to design protocols. This is only one approach. Okay? Every time you move in, though, see, we've gotten down to 3 feet at 5 seconds, right, where the thing is on for 5 seconds. Now we've moved to 2 feet. We've dropped it back down to 1 second. I don't want it on for 5 seconds where the dog's becoming more and more anxious. So you're building up. Every time you get closer, you're dropping the time back that the thing is on. Okay, so you end up at the bottom of the stairs in that section where it's on for 5 seconds. The protocol continues. Now, obviously, during all of this, you are monitoring the dog really, really carefully for signs of stress. Okay? You're not going to go, okay, we're 3 feet, and now we're 2 feet, and there's 5 seconds if the dog is absolutely freaking out. Okay? If the dog is showing signs of stress, you have to go back to where the dog was comfortable and make smaller steps from there. So the protocol continues. You're down at the bottom of the stairs now, okay, right at the bottom of the stairs, and you've built up to where you can do that for 10 seconds. Now you're going to start going up the stairs. This particular dog does not have a fear of stairs. If he did, we would have to address that separately. Okay? You're at the bottom of the stairs. Once you get up to step 1, you're building up again gradually. The time that it's on, again, you're feeding the treats, you're monitoring the dog for signs of stress. You're building up, and each time you get up another stair, you're dropping the time back down. So you're making one variable harder, you're making another one easier. The closer you get to the trigger, the greater the chances are that the dog is going to become frightened, right? So, assuming that the staircase has 15 steps, we're skipping ahead here. The final steps of the protocol, step 15, the top one, you're going to build up, right, until you achieve, let's say, 10 seconds. Then you get to the very top of the stairs, and you go back down. Now, just because you've reached the top of the stairs with this thing being turned on and the dog's calm and you're giving treats, does not mean that the dog is then okay with the air conditioner. Okay? That just means that you are doing it in the context of a training session, and the dog is okay. He knows that this is what we're doing now, and you've built up, and it's safe, and it's all right. However, if you leave it at that, and you leave the house and go, wow, that was great. We got the dog to the top of the stairs. What's going to happen when the dog is somewhere else in the house? We don't have that same training scenario, and all of a sudden the air conditioner goes on. It's a whole different context, right? So you have to do other things then. I like to use play with fearful dogs also. Somebody mentioned that earlier. This is one of those things where Widget happened to like tug. So I would actually, get out the tug, and I could have started this at the bottom of the stairs also. But I really wanted him to get something great when he got to the top. So we would play tug near the thing while it was on. Okay? I'd start playing, she'd turn it on, la 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 la. Okay, the thing goes off and I stop playing tug. Okay, so I'm associating it with something good too. Also, when the dog is playing, whether it's tug or chasing a ball or whatever it is, that dog is already like into something, right? They're focusing on something, they're getting a good emotion, they're happy, right? It's very hard to feel fearful when you're playing and when you're happy. So play is something that is really, really useful. You can do nothing more. If you don't want to sit down and design a step-by-step protocol like that, you can do nothing more than, sit there and let's say that the dog has a fear of things like bicycles. Okay, kids riding bicycles, which is really, really common, right? Kids on scooters. Contrary to some things, no, you don't just sit there and jerk the dog every time he reacts, right? What you could do is take the dog out in a park where there's kids, right, who are on scooters, and let's say they're on a path that goes around the park, and you're way back here away from them to begin with, right? So you don't want to get the dog right on top of them first. You always want to start at a distance that is comfortable for the dog. How do we know what distance that is? We ask the dog. We look at him, we go, well, what's your body language like? How are you feeling? Okay? The dog absolutely is really, really stressed, by the way. They are not going to take treats. Okay? Really important to understand. So it's not necessarily that the dog doesn't like food or doesn't like that particular treat. He's just so stressed that he can't eat. He can't do it. So let's say you start way back from where the kids on the bikes are, and you're playing ball, and you're playing tug, and everything else. And sooner or later, the dog is going to kind of get habituated to it, right? It's okay. So now we're going a little bit closer. And here, this is a dog, like you said before, what do you do if a dog doesn't like food or doesn't care for food? And it's really not that the dog is too stressed. It's just this is not a food-motivated dog. I want to use whatever motivates that dog. I don't care what it is. Okay, you want to, chase a little thing on a string, whatever it is that floats your boat, I'm happy to use it. So remember to work under the dog's threshold. If the dog does react, and this is something that I hear a lot of people saying different things about, but if the dog does react, let's say that I've got a dog who is fearful, and again, this is, it touches on the fear aggression, but we're looking more at the fear end of it. But if the dog does sort of react to something, and it's going to happen. Things look good on paper, and then you go to implement the protocol, and stuff happens. What do? Well, number one, you go back and you revise your protocol, obviously, but you also want to get the dog out of the situation, and you want to do it as gently and calmly as possible. Okay? That's why things like the walk away, or what Patricia McConnell will say, the emergency U-turn. I just want to do it really calmly. Okay, so the dog's starting to react. Okay, let's go over here. No big deal. Okay, versus like Simba's owner when that happened, and you can't blame her. I mean, she reacted. She couldn't help it, but there was definitely a correction in there. She went, oh my God, she went for another dog, right? I mean, she could have gone, okay, let's go over here, right? It's hard to remain, not to blame her. It's hard to remain really calm when your dog is lunging at another dog. So if the dog reacts, remove it from the situation and reassess the program. We've already talked about the owner skills. I want to go on to fear of visitors. I really want to get into specific fears and what to do about them. And some of you guys who have written the questions, your stuff is already in here, so you'll be happy to know. Number one, all fear issues can turn into fear-based aggression issues. Very, very important to understand, very important for your clients to understand. Somebody also mentioned during the break about their dog who was an adolescent, maybe 9, 10 months, and the dog is now starting to go from sort of a fearful demeanor to a little bit more barking, and maybe there's some lunging in other cases with other dogs. Whether that's because it's a fear period, I don't know, but I can tell you that a lot of dogs who are fearful as puppies go through adolescence, and then it starts turning into fear-based aggression. Because whether or not the dog is spayed or neutered, there's still hormones, there's still stuff going on in the system, and that dog who started out being really fearful is now starting to kind of become a little more assertive, and we get things like the air snapping, okay, and the little growling and the little barking and the little avoidance behaviors, back and forth. I think it's very, very important for people to understand that, because a lot of times if I go to a client's house and I'm not called there specifically to address a fear issue, because I don't get a lot of people calling for specifically that, but I'll get there and all of a sudden it's, well, okay, the dog is peeing all over the house, great, we can fix that, but did you realize how scared your dog was of people? Because now the dog is only 4 months old, but if you leave that untreated, here's what's going to happen when your dog gets into adolescence. Okay, so it's really important that people understand the effect of adolescence and hormones and gaining of confidence with fearful dogs and what it can turn into. Fear of visitors. If the first thing I always ask when people say that their dog is afraid of visitors, I want to know how often they get visitors. Because there are some houses where, especially with lots of kids, where people are in and out all the time. And then there are some people, like me and my husband, who don't have people over a whole lot. And I'm going to tell you now, if they really seldom have visitors, it's really a management issue. Because how are you going to practice with people every day in the home when they're not there? Okay? That becomes more of a management issue. And what I mean by management, again, baby gates, crates, putting the dog outside if you need to. I will say, though, that if they're going to manage it, it's a good idea to set up, the little safe area for the dog. Give the dog something. Let's say you're having people over. Give the dog something like a stuffed Kong, something the dog really likes, so that, number one, the dog has stress relief, right, by chewing. But number two, you are still creating a good association with people coming in the home. You're just not doing it where the people are handing the dog a treat, right? People come in, wow, I go in the room, I get this great thing. Okay, so you're working towards making it better, even though you don't have people coming in a lot. A quick story on management. Some people don't have any. I worked with a Catahoula Chow mix, which is a great idea. Shouldn't we just maybe throw some wolf in there too? Catahoula Chow mix, who was probably like one of the top 3 most aggressive dogs I've ever worked with. Multiple puncture wounds to multiple people. Not a good mix. This dog was not a happy camper. And, the strange thing is, he lived with a couple, no kids, and the couple, they were both in law enforcement, And they did have quite a lot of parties, with other law enforcement officers would come over, blow off some steam. And they lived in a 2-story home, and Beaudry, who was the dog, the owners obviously knew, the dog had an issue, and they wouldn't have called a trainer otherwise, but what they told me at our very first session when I was taking a history was, we have these parties, and we were giving a party, and what we usually do is we lock Beaudry in the upstairs bedroom, okay? By lock, I mean they just put him in there. There's no lock on the door. And the last time we had a party, and people are drinking, it's a party, okay? And the last time, some guy went up to use the phone that was in the upstairs bedroom. I don't know who said to him, just go use the phone upstairs. Maybe they didn't like him very much, but he went up there, and Beaudry was in there, and Beaudry just kind of, and kind of growled at the guy. And the guy actually made his call and was leaving, and Beaudry bit him in the butt, okay? And I don't know if he was just embarrassed and he didn't want to really say anything to anybody, or if he was just drunk and maybe didn't feel it that much, I don't know. But next, so nobody really told the owners and said anything at the time. And next, a female guest went in there to, again, use the phone, because that's the best place to put the phone when you have an aggressive dog locked in the room. But again, went in to use the phone, and he actually just lunged for her and got her in the stomach pretty good, okay? So again, the first one was sort of a lunging fear bite in the back, and by the second one, he was worked up already, right? He was amped up, and it was a woman, and she was less threatening to him than the man, and he just went for it. So a perfect illustration of why good management is really, really important. This was one of the few dogs that I really have worked muzzled the whole time. In fact, they actually insisted. They said, we need to put the dog on the muzzle before you come in the door. I said, well, you know best, It's okay with me. I'm not going to argue with you. So if you are arriving to work with a dog with fear issues or fear-based aggression issues, the dog should be somewhere else when you walk in the door. The video that I showed you of the Spanish water dog, and somebody asked, by the way, one of your questions was, how do you set that up? That really was my first session with these people ever. I had never met the dog before, and I just told them that I really needed to get some footage of this type of thing, and I gave them a little discount, and I had somebody, I knocked on the door, and I had the person come out, and I handed him the video camera, and he went back in. And then we waited a few minutes, and then I knocked on the door, and we filmed it, just so you know. Hold on one sec, you got the mic coming.
Could you talk about, I have a dog who's fearful with strangers and worked with a dog trainer, and she said she discouraged sort of putting the dog in a safe spot because she said that, the dog then would associate being separated from me, when people come being separated from me.
Does your dog have separation anxiety?
Well, no. But I guess she's very, she does look to me for security. And so would you say, though, but she does bark, everything you've said is very familiar, but that it would be, I guess, more of a management to put her in a separate place, so even though she's separate, but give her something great to eat.
Okay, so you're saying that the other trainer is suggesting that basically when people come over, putting the dog in another room is bad because then the dog is separated from you?
And associates people coming with
being separated
right.
from you. So she's saying the dog might develop a bad association. And that's why I asked if the dog has separation issues, because frankly, if you put my dog in the other room with a stuffed Kong, he loves me, but you know what? He's like, send me a postcard. He's okay. I think it would really depend on the dog, and I think that separation anxiety would throw a little bit of a wrench into it, and for something like that, I might have the dog tethered with you, like way on the opposite side of the room. I would tweak it a little bit, so it's a good point, But again, the management is not that, we're never going to let the dog near people. That's not the idea. We want to get him used to people. It's just if people really seldom have visitors, you may as well manage it, because you're not going to do a daily protocol with them. For arrivals, again, for your arrival, the dog should be either behind a gate, I like the sliding glass door if there's one, going to the yard. You can see the dog. You can kind of get an idea of what's going on. And, I have had one dog in the whole time I've been doing this where I said, we're not letting that dog in the house, because it was just going to be all kinds of bad. And I actually at one point thought the dog was like really settled and calm and everything else. And I said, okay, you can let the dog in. And he got in and he put his hand on the door and I went, stop. just the dog just kind of, you can tell a lot through a sliding glass door. If There's one other thing that I just want to mention that is sometimes people are not really sure. I'll always ask if a dog has a fear of visitors, I really want to know how is the dog when you take him out for a walk, because sometimes they'll say, oh, well, the dog's totally fine on walks. He's great with people, It's just people coming into the house. Sometimes the reason he's great with people outside on walks is because they're way further away. Okay? If those people, and I'll say, does that mean that people come up and pet him and say hi to him? And oh, no, we never do that. So how do you know, right? So it may be that the dog really does have an issue with people outside the home as well, and I kind of, you want to know which is it. Complementary therapies, and we will be talking about that in a little bit. Rescue remedy, I know you all know about rescue remedy, the Bach flower remedies, right? Rescue remedy, liquid, tincture, drop it in the dog's water, 4 drops in the bowl. I would do this before people are coming over. I might do it also at other times just so that it's not associated only with people coming over. But it doesn't hurt. It's going to just take the edge off. It's not going to drug the dog out. The DAP, D-A-P, is something that I might spray in the room before people come over as well. And we will be talking about the DAP. I promise I'll explain a little bit about that. The safe spot, and we talked a little bit about this with the crate. I think it's very important that if the dog does have a crate or a bed or some spot that is his safe spot, that you situate it in the room in such a way that the dog is not going to have to go past the visitors to get to it. I think a lot of people miss that one. Okay, so yeah, he's safe. He's right over there. Well, he'd have to go through, the whole line of people and the couches and in between the couch and the people on the chair to get there. That's not what you want. One thing that I do like to do is teach the dog that when somebody comes to the door to go to their bed. I do this with aggressive dogs as well. The fearful dog, you don't really want them greeting people at the door. Because again, if somebody does something that scares the dog enough, there can be an issue. And why have this dog scared anyway, right? I want them to get used to the people in a gradual way. So teaching the dog that when the doorbell rings or somebody knocks on the door, go to your bed, which is away from the door, and settle is a beautiful thing. Instruct visitors to ignore the dog. Now, when you tell somebody to ignore the dog, you all know what happens. Okay? The visitor comes in, you go, oh, just ignore the dog, he's fine, he's just a little afraid. And so, they're ignoring the dog and everything's great. And then the dog comes over finally to them, gets up the nerve to say hi, and instead of sitting there and ignoring the dog, they go, hi! Because now they're going, okay, well, the dog came up to me, so it must be okay. No. So ignore, and I will spell out specifically, ignore means do not look at the dog, do not talk to the dog, do not interact with the dog, and most importantly, if the dog comes up to you, do not turn around and pet the dog. Okay? There is something to be said for just sitting still and not looking at the dog and not staring at the dog and letting the dog come up and sniff you and get to know you and realize that you're a good person, and it's not that, oh, I thought this person was okay, but look what happened when I got close. All of a sudden it reached for me. All right? Should visitors feed treats? I think this is another hotly debated topic. I think that a lot of owners mean well, and they say, oh, here, give my dog a treat. It'll be okay. Well, it may be okay with some dogs, and with some dogs it may not. By definition, when somebody is giving a treat to a dog, how are they doing it usually? Okay? So there's your body language right there. We're facing the dog dead on. We're bending forward. We may be looming over the dog, and now we're going to reach out towards the dog. Does the dog go, oh, cookie? Maybe not. Okay? If the dog is superfood motivated, possibly. If you have a lab, you might get away with it. But in other cases, no, not so much. I think that if you have a dog who is really, really fearful of visitors, and we're not talking mildly, I mean, the dog's really scared of people, it is not a great idea for the visitors to be the ones giving the treats initially. Okay? Even if they're tossing them, I would rather the owner give the treats. So if I'm the owner and I've got my dog with me and there's the visitors, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to treat the dog. Okay? The dog is just getting treats in the presence of these big, scary people. Dog doesn't have to go up to those people. Dog doesn't have to do a damn thing, except take the treats from me. Okay? I might do some sits. I might do some touches, just to get the dog focused and relaxed. If the dog is sort of okay with the visitors, and there's a lot of dogs like this. It's kind of the approach avoidance thing, or they sort of warm up after the visitors have been there a little bit, but they're not really comfortable. The visitors can toss treats, okay? Again, not, not that kind of motion. And if it's somebody, and this is what I usually say to people, if it's somebody like, somebody will say, oh, my sister comes over all the time, because she comes over to watch the kids, and the dog's like pretty much okay with her, but still a little skittish. That's one of those scenarios where I would say have the sister do the touches with the dog, teach her how to do that. Okay? In a little bit, I'll show you how to transfer touch, actually, from one person to another. But you do have to give specific instructions also if you're going to have somebody else do the touches with the dog. You have to make sure that you tell them exactly what to do because you don't want them going, touch. Okay? Again, you're as trainers. I mean, you're so used to making small movements and you're so used to doing this in a certain way. But somebody will go touch over the dog's head. So you've got to teach them exactly how to do that. There is one other thing that I like to do with certain dogs. And again, this is all depending on how stressed the dog is, how bad the fear issue is. And I call this the glove of love. And what it is any old, like a work glove, a leather work glove, or like a gardening glove, anything like that. And this is not in the presence of the visitors now, okay? You feed the dog treats with that. Cheese is good, it's really stinky, right? Or hot dogs. You just give the dog something, and the only time the dog gets that thing is when that glove is on your hand, okay? And now you take that person, like the sister who comes over a lot, and who the dog's sort of okay with, and you have her put the glove on and feed the treats. The dog already has a really good association with the glove. It smells like cheese. And now this other person is, oh, wow, that's great. That's perfect. Closely related to that is it's something that has your scent on it as well. And a lot of times, and I believe John Rogerson said this years ago, if you take something, and other people before him that were into Schutzen, I believe, if you take something that has the owner's scent on it and you associate that with the visitors, it can really help. A trainer friend of mine who does a lot of Schutzen work and does a lot of board and train, at her place. She had a dog in for board and train that was really aggressive, and I mean just hitting the gate and everything else. And it was really interesting because if she went up to the dog, they tried this with the owner because she had to be able to work with the dog. If she went up to the dog holding the owner's pocketbook, the dog was fine. If she didn't have the pocketbook, the dog wanted to have her for lunch. It was really interesting. So sometimes with visitors, and it's not like, people you don't know well, here, hi, put on my coat. But, sir, could you put this dress on and walk into my home? But, so you don't want to do that. But even if it's something like, a scarf or just something, a robe, anything, have them come in. If people are willing to help you, you have friends that are dog people that are willing to do this, have them come in. And I'm telling you, you'll see it on the dog. The dog is like, you smell like Mom. How weird is that? And it really will it doesn't work with all dogs, but what does, right? It does put a lot of dogs at ease. It really does help. Now, I think it's important that when you do have the visitors, let's say that you sent the dog to his safe place. And let's say, here's your living room, you've got your couch, you've got your chairs and whatever, and the dog's safe place is back there. I think it's important that when you're chatting and all that as the dog's owner, you are really monitoring the dog. Okay, and you always want to give the dog a way to get out of the room altogether, by the way. Okay, I'm not forcing the dog to be here. If he really wants to leave, he can. I am not tethering him on the bed or anything. But if he looks like he's interested, okay, if he looks like he wants to stay there, yeah, try some of these techniques. If he really, really looks uncomfortable, just get him out of the room. Okay, you're not going to make anything better over time by forcing him to be in there if he really doesn't want to be. So the idea is after a while, after being around a lot of people, he gets used to it. The butt biter. Beware the butt biter. In that video with Rio, the Spanish water dog, I did walk ahead, and somebody mentioned this also. I did walk ahead of them when I went into the other room. Normally, I would not do that either. Okay. Again, I was not in my right mind. My dog had just passed away. But normally, I would like the owner and the dog to be walking in front of me, not the other way around. If you have a dog who is, and you know what we mean by a butt biter, these are the dogs who are fearful, who would never, it's like a little kid who would never go up to another kid and say something to their face, but they'd run up behind them and smack them and run away, right? And that's how I explain the fear of butt biters to my clients. I hate to say a lot of shepherds do this as well, but it's true. If you have a dog who you know is a butt biter, it's important that, number one, the dog be restrained or put away or something before the person actually gets up and leaves to go to the door, right? Just like Beaudry, the dog in the upstairs who bit the guy on the way out. However, I think that a lot of times people know that, but the thing that they miss is when the person needs to get up and just go to the other room. The visitor gets up to use the bathroom, and the dog's like, here's my chance, and goes up and bites them. So if it's a butt biter, have the dog on a tether with you, have the dog on a leash with you. If the evening's winding down, people are going to be ready to leave soon. Put the dog in the other room if you have to. You've already done all your good work. We don't want to ruin everything by having him nip somebody. Thanks for coming, nip them on the way out. I'm so sure they'll be back. Any questions on visitors before we move on? We have one back there.
Sort of touching on that when somebody gets up to leave the room. And my experience with my own dogs is that they may be able to get up and leave the room, but the sudden environmental change of them coming back down the hall to the threshold sets the scared dog off.
Right.
And is there any, aside from doing exercises with the dog that the owner can do to engage the animal, is there any other recommendation that you'd make?
Okay, good. I'm glad that you brought that up. SEC, sudden environmental contrast, meaning that, and this happens a lot with dogs that are out on the street, meaning that the dog might be fine when there's like a bunch of people around, but if there's nothing in the environment and then there's the sudden appearance of something, like a person showing up, the dog kind of freaks, right? So she's saying that when the person comes back into the room, although the dog might not have been a butt biter, that's going to set the dog off, right? So in that case, I would honestly say, yeah, you can do, if you have somebody willing to be bait, you can certainly do, really desensitization, right? There's a person, and here it is, I'm giving you treats, and the person disappears. Here's a person, I'm giving you treats, and do it that way. And I probably would do a lot of that if the person's willing to do it. Other than that, it's going to be management if it's like a once-in-a-while thing, meaning that the dog is on a leash, the dog is on a tether, whatever, So, but I do think you can get dogs over that to an extent, Okay, what about when it's not a visitor, but it's actually a family member? This is a really, really tough situation, and I think that there's a lot of emotion involved when it's a family member. I hate to say this, but a lot of time, and I apologize to the guys here, it's the testosterone. Seriously, it's almost always the man in the family. Is that what you guys find too? Yeah. Okay. And I mean, it's just, men are larger and they hold themselves differently and everything else, and very often it's the man. Sometimes it's the kids. Okay. Kids are unpredictable. So let's go over what to do in each case. And it may be the wife. So when we talk about the husband, let's insert wife here, or whoever the family member is, it doesn't really matter. If the trigger is a child, number one, if the kid is under 10 years old, I don't want them unsupervised with the dog anyway. Okay? I think a lot of parents kind of take this stuff for granted, and if you think about it, there's that fearful dog who's in his crate, and the kid just goes crawling up to the crate. Really, really bad scenario. You got the fight or flight reflex engaged. You know what I really want? I really want like a door, like to the laundry room, where you have, unless you have a giant dog like mine, okay, if you have a normal sized dog, and you have like just a little thing that the dog can fit through, like a little doggy door, but the kid can't, and it's locked. I think this would be like a brilliant invention. Somebody should just come up with this, because seriously, the dog could then get away from the kid anytime he wanted. And the kid couldn't get through there, okay? So I do think that the child should be associated with everything good in life, okay? If the dog, is very food motivated, even if he's not, I think the kid can be involved in maybe not preparing the dog's food, but at least putting the bowl down, unless the dog has resource guarding issues. Okay, that's another whole problem. Just want to say that. Somebody will go, well, she said that was a great idea. Not what we're talking about. If the child is too young to really, hold the bowl and feed the dog, at least the child can be in the room when you put the food down for the dog. Again, you're just making a good association between the presence of the child and something that's really good. Same thing with treats. If the dog really enjoys going for walks, the kid should be on the walk as well. Okay? Playing fetch. I mean, whatever it is, try to involve the child in any way you can. Doing basic training. If the kid is, old enough, which it depends on the kid, but at least I would say 6, 7 years old, especially if you use things like hand signals. I mean, I love it when I have a dog who is afraid of a kid or a kid who's afraid of the dog, and you can get them to work together. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, and just hand signals like, and the dog sits. And of course, you get the dog to where he's really, really good on it first so that the kid is successful, right? And the dog is not scared of the kid because now he's just concentrating on that exercise. He's not going, oh, it's that scary little person who waves their arms and runs and is manic. I think it's important, too, to teach the child what to do, meaning do not approach the dog when the dog is sleeping. That's always a big one, isn't it? Okay. Do not approach when the dog is eating. Don't try to take things away from the dog, which is huge, huge. You have dogs with fear issues, and then you've got a kid coming over to take something. Again, it can be a resource guarding issue too. Either way, it's a really bad, bad scenario. Another one that I think kids don't get a lot of the time, a lot of times what will happen is that the child has actually seen the owner punish the dog. The dog does something bad, and the owner goes, no, stop that right now, or maybe even smacks the dog. And then the kids, kids imitate their parents. So now the parent is somewhere else, and the dog does something that's bad, and the kid's trying to do the right thing, because that's what he saw mommy do. And he goes, no, that's bad, stop. Okay? So we have to specifically teach kids that when the dog does something bad, go and get a parent. Okay? It's not up to you don't punish the dog. You don't have to do that. It's not your place to do that. Again, the hugging deal, especially little girls. Little boys always want to wrestle with the dog. Little girls want to hug the dog. Most dogs not loving the restraint thing. Okay, so we're teaching kids not to hug. Also teach them how to pet the dog so that the dog is not afraid of them. Just saying don't come down like this over their head is one thing. What I like to do with kids, I like to get the kid there, and I like to say, okay, you're going to be the doggy, and I'm going to be the person, and I'll ask them what kind of dog they want to be. And I'll say, I'm going to pet you 2 different ways, and I want you to tell me which one you like better. And the first way, I'll just go and just on their cheek, and I'll say, oh, what a nice doggy. Oh, that's nice. And they're all like, okay. And then the second one, I'll go, hi, nice dog. Okay? And all the girls like the first way. Most of the boys will also say they like the first one. Once in a while, you get the wise-ass kid who goes, I like the second one. Okay? But they really get it. And if you look at it, that hand coming down, it looks scary, and they do seem to get it that way. I will sometimes have the child actually practice petting, like on my arm or on a stuffed animal, okay, so that it's not on the actual dog when they're practicing. Also, if you happen to see, this happened to me actually, if you happen to see the child abusing the dog, bring it to the attention of the owner because perhaps the dog has a good reason for being afraid of the kid. I was actually sitting there at a table taking a history from a client, and I was facing the sliding glass door that the dog was outside of, so I could kind of watch him, and the client was facing me, and the 2-year-old son went outside with the dog, and as the woman is, she's like, la, 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 2-year-old son outside with the dog, okay. And as the woman is giving me answers, I look over, and the kid is doing this. And not just like little kid, the kid's hauling off and really kicking the crap out of the dog. And I called it nicely to the woman's attention. Actually, okay, I'll tell you what I really did. I did call it nicely to her attention, but I will tell you what I did immediately, okay, first, because I don't know what happened in my body, but my brain process went out the window. And actually, there was about a second between the time that I saw the kid kick the dog and the time I was holding the kid. It was No. But he seemed pretty good at it. And, it may be that he never did it in front of her. Or it may be that she was just embarrassed for her son's behavior. Okay? But it's really, really important if you see something like that going on to really have a talk with the person about it. Let's talk about if the trigger is an adult, okay, whether it's the man or the woman. If somebody adopts a dog and it doesn't like one person, it's really hard for that person not to feel like, what's wrong with me? This dog doesn't like me. Here it is, we thought we'd get this dog for the kids, or we thought we'd rescue this dog, and wow, it seems to like everybody else in the family, but not me. It's really frustrating for that person. And so you've got to realize that when you're working with them and really reassure the person it's not you, okay, and especially if it's a man. Okay, look, you know what? Every dog that I see, if they're going to be afraid of one person in the family, it's the guy. Okay, don't take it personally. So what can we do? Number one, if it is a moderate to severe fear, it's going to be different than if it's mild. Okay? If it's moderate to severe, I really don't want the man even trying to befriend the dog. Okay? There are a lot of really well-meaning people who think, oh, if I just try hard enough, I can get the dog to like me. The dog would like you much better if you ignored him. Okay? At least for the time being, at least until he gets used to you. If it is, well, I'm going to give you a couple different things you can do. If it's sort of mild to moderate, eudaimon actually means, I just want, it's similar to with children, I just want that guy to be the thing that predicts all kinds of good stuff. Okay? So I want that guy to give the dog his food. I want that guy to be involved in any way he can. Now, whether or not he should take the dog for a walk on his own depends on how afraid the dog is of him. Okay? It's a judgment call a lot of the time. So we can do things like, if it's mild, sometimes we do things like leaving the dog with just that one person, even for a long weekend. This is where your wife and kids get a vacation, you know? And you've got the dog there the whole time. We can do things like tethering a dog to someone, but I would not do this if the fear is more than mild. Okay, I think that would be inhumane in some cases. So enforced togetherness can work. It definitely can backfire as well, so be careful about it. Also, you know, with the eudaimon, if the dog is in training classes, I think it's a great idea for the man to be the one that brings the dog there, okay, if the dog is willing to work with him. If not, at least if he can be there, assuming that it's a positive class and it's a positive experience for the dog. Okay, I know everybody's coughing. Is it not really dry in here? Is it just me? Yeah, I know. Okay. Okay, so good associations. You can create a good association having another family member every time the person shows up. Oh, look, there's that person. It's Daddy, you know, and then have the person take off. You can do a lot of that. Treats on defeats is another thing that you can do in certain situations. Actually, a trainer friend told me she does this all the time. She just has the man sit there, and there's like a little trail of treats, and then there's a bunch of treats on his feet, on his shoes. And he's just sitting there, and it's really, really important that the guy does not go, oh, good, he's here, you know, and he shouldn't move, he shouldn't do anything, just, no. And the dog kind of, again, it's up to the dog if he's going to approach or not. So we're making just a little trail up to the person, and he will actually sit there and take the treats off the shoes once he's comfortable, okay? Of course, this is just an initial thing to get him near the person. If you have a friend, or the client has a friend that has a really friendly dog, meaning friendly and comfortable with people, bringing that dog over to play with your dog can be a really, really positive way to get them to realize that that person is not a big, bad, scary thing. Okay? So you have the outgoing social dog who comes up to the person that the other dog is scared of, and that, in fact, I would even make it better. I would even have that person give that dog treats. Oh, you're the best dog in the world. Here's some cheese. Here's some hot tuna. You're not getting any. Okay, right? And the other dog, what you'll see a lot of the time, if there's another dog there, and I used to see this with the wolves all the time, because they were so skittish and afraid to approach at first, but sometimes if you have one who's fearful and you have another one who will come up, if that one is kind of standing across you, the other one's like, la, 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 sneaking in behind that one, right? It's, again, giving them confidence. So if you do have another dog who can show that dog, look, he's not so bad. You don't have to worry about him, okay? That dog's going to get it. I do want to do, we have, let's see, when are we taking a break? 3:40? Okay, so we have 20 minutes. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to read through this case history together. Do you guys all have that, or is that one you're giving out? You're giving out? Handing it out? Okay. I am going to, what we're going to do here is, this is a case history of Smudge. It's a great name for a dog, Smudge. I love that. Smudge is actually a German Shepherd mix. She has been rescued, actually, by a family, and she's somewhere between 1 and 3 years old. They just didn't know at the time that I came to see them. Some of the facts have been changed, and some of them are actually what happened. And I'm going to wait till you all get this. Question?
Going back to your last slide, I was wondering how you defined the mild, moderate, and severe fear.
Okay. How do I define mild, moderate, and severe fear as far as like fear of a family member, for example? Well, you're going to know from this case history what a severe fear is, okay? We'll see that. I would say a mild fear, I mean, the dog can be in the same room as the person. The dog's comfortable. It's just certain things that the person does that might scare the dog. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, it's not terrible, but there's certain things that trigger it with that person. I think if the dog is just globally like, I just don't want to be anywhere near that person, that can kind of go from moderate to severe. You know, but this will be an example of what a severe fear of a person is. I'm going to start reading this to you guys. So again, Smudge, 1 to 3-year-old female German Shepherd mix. And again, the names have been changed to protect the innocent. Okay, Smudge lives with Bonnie and Joe Smith. They've got a 5-year-old daughter, a 2.5-year-old son, and 2 cats. They live in a nice suburban community, 2-story home, pretty typical. Smudge was adopted from a rescue group, and when they adopted Smudge, the rescue group said that Smudge was part of a litter of puppies that was abandoned at somebody's home. And what the rescue people did, because they thought it was the right thing to do, was that people would just go over there and feed them, okay? They didn't get them placed, they didn't do anything else, they just went over and kind of kept them going until they were 8 months old. At which point the rescue then said, okay, well, we're going to take them in and try to place them, right? So this is how they got Smudge. They've had Smudge for 4 months. And this is you coming into this, okay? So now they've had it for 4 months. When the Smiths first got Smudge, they sent her to a training facility, a board and train. And after 3 weeks, she came back and she knew some basic commands. There were both male and female trainers at the facility. And they made a point of socializing Smudge with the male trainers in particular because she seemed a little bit scared of men. And they did a good job and she became comfortable with the male trainers at the facility. Smudge is really, really frightened of Joe, the man of the family. If he is in the room, if he is in the house, anywhere, she's pacing. She's absolutely unable to relax. She doesn't lie down. She's just pacing and freaked out. She is, however, very comfortable with Bonnie and with the kids. Joe works outside the home. He has a regular Monday through Friday full-time job, and he goes away for business. So 1 to 2 weeks out of the month, Joe could be gone. Okay? At which point Smudge is very happy and throws a party. Smudge is fed a low-quality dry dog food 3 times a day, which is what the rescue group recommended. They're trying to do the right thing. However, she will not eat if Joe is anywhere in the house. Not just in the room, but she won't eat if he's in the house. She doesn't, even if she does eat when he's not home, she doesn't normally finish her food, so it's left down over an hour average. Smudge is crate trained, but she still does have some potty accidents in the house. She sleeps in the bedroom with Bonnie and Joe. She's not in the crate, by the way. The crate is kept downstairs. She sleeps upstairs in the bedroom with Bonnie and Joe on the floor beside Bonnie's side of the bed. If Joe gets up during the night, Smudge growls and barks at him. Okay? The same thing happens if Bonnie gets up before Joe in the morning. The crate is left downstairs with the door open. And if nobody's home during the day, for a couple of hours, Smudge is left in the crate with the door closed, and she seems perfectly comfortable there. Joe has taken Smudge for walks on his own. She does not appear happy, but she's also not frantically trying to get away from him. Bonnie mentions that if they have Smudge on a leash in the house, she will stay calmly in the room that Joe is in. Smudge receives a 45-minute walk daily, usually with Bonnie, but sometimes with Joe because they have the kids to watch. When Bonnie takes her for a walk, Smudge really enjoys it. Smudge loves to chase the ball, she's a shepherd mix, down the hallway in the house when Bonnie throws it. Joe is really, really frustrated. Okay, he is ready to give Smudge back to the rescue. He feels really bad about the whole situation. It's causing a lot of stress in the home. She not only barks if he's up in the middle of the night, but she kind of boofs, okay, you know that whoo sound, whenever he comes down the stairs, whenever he enters a room, if he gestures or if he looks at her. When she boofs, Joe turns around and tries to stare her down. Sometimes he yells at her. He's frustrated. He also yells at her if she has a potty accident when he's home alone with her, which is only for a couple of hours at a time. So what we're going to do here is we are actually going to, you know what I'd like to do, actually, if you guys don't mind, is take our break now and then come back and do our sessions on this, okay? You can think while you're in the restroom. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just, can we just come back at 1:45? Actually break up. You know, is everybody back? Because I think we can maybe do 4 groups would be fine. Some people had to leave early. Okay, guys, what I'm going to do is actually break you into, I think, 4 groups. And I don't want you to be with your friends, God knows, so you'll have to talk to other trainers. So I'm going to just look at you and go 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Once you're broken up, group 1 will be right down front here. Group 2 will meet right here. Group 3 back there, and group 4 there. Okay, sorry it's a little hard in the auditorium-style seating, but do the best you can. And what I'd like you to do is just discuss the questions. Okay, we're going to do this briefly. And then select one person from your group who's going to be the spokesperson. Okay, and all that, you don't have to come up or anything. You just have to talk into a mic while you're down there in case you have fear issues. Okay, and then we're going to go around and hear your answers. By the way, I had a couple of people asking about the books that are for sale up there. Since I'm such a good salesperson, I never mention my own stuff. All of those books, if you kind of saw them and wanted to order them, but maybe not so much today, they're Phantom Publishing. You can go directly to the website, which is phantompub.com, phantompub.com. Okay? If you feel better about Amazon, you can get it through them too. And you can get them through, and you can get them through, better yet, phantompub.com, and if not, then tozerdogvideos.com. Okay? You can also get lots of fabulous videos, including one that I did for a 2-day seminar on the ins and outs of in-home training from the Tozers as well. And lots of great stuff by Trish King and everybody else. So, okay, commercial segment over. To our groups. And you've all picked one person who's going to be your spokesperson, I hope? The person without the fear of public speaking? Okay, so group 1 is down here. And what's going to happen is a microphone is going to magically appear. Okay, so why don't we start with group 1, and who's the spokesperson? Okay. No, I'm going to read the questions. I will read the questions, and then I would like each group to just give me their answers, okay? So the first question here, I'm feeding back. We're good? Okay. So the first question here is, what else would you like to know?
We would like to know what kind of training did the dog got at the facility.
Okay. Meaning what methods were used?
Why was this dog sent there to begin with? Was it because
okay.
there was clearly a problem with a fear towards men, something else, because they were told this is what you need to do with your dog initially?
Okay, good
So
question.
the idea behind him
Good
going to
question.
training.
Why did they send the dog in the first place for training?
What kind
That
of
would be
training?
helpful.
Was it positive reinforcement,
Right.
so on and so forth? The expectations of the family regarding the training? What kind of follow-through program is there after the training with the family, if there's any? Initial reaction and relation of the dog to the family and to Joe in particular, just before training. Maybe the 5 minutes that they met before the dog was shipped to the training.
Okay.
The experience of the family with dogs in general and
question.
experience with education with dogs.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, we want to know how much does this family really know about canine behavior?
If any,
So-
right.
Okay.
Any training program details, and I said that already.
Okay.
So basically, that's it.
Good. Yeah, I do think it's really important to know what kind of training the dog had and what was the dog like before, for the 5 minutes, before it went off to training. And why did they send the dog to training? Okay, so these are all things I'd want to know as well. Good questions. Who's group 2? We have a spokesperson. Okay, same question. What would you like to know? And we're not going to repeat the things that were already said. I understand you guys may have had the same ones.
Well, we thought of most of those items, but we also wondered if the dog had a basic health check before, or if it has had a recent health check. We were curious about Joe and Bonnie's relationship and what the household was like. You know, whether there was a lot of tension in the household with him traveling so much and everything, because that can translate into problems with the dog.
Yeah.
We were curious about what what cued the training facility into working on his interactions with, or Smudge's interactions with male trainers. What
How did they
set
know?
that off? How did they know, and how bad was it
Right.
at the
Good
training
question.
facility?
Good questions, too.
What, if anything, it would have been nice to know who the neighbors were. Like, were they children? Were they adults? Were they males? And what exactly were the circumstances of the neighbors feeding the pups? I mean, how were they taking care of them?
Okay, so they want to know when Smudge was back with that litter of pups
Right,
from
when
the
they were
rescue
back
group.
for all those
Who was
8
feeding them?
months,
Yeah.
what was going on.
Okay.
So we wanted also to know what type of activity was going on in the house where, especially when Joe was there? I mean, is he playing the stereo really loud? Is he working in a workshop running tools or something?
Yeah, he seems like he would be.
Yeah, he
that's
seems
Joe.
like the kind of guy, you know.
Probably doing heavy machinery.
And whether there was,
Poor Joe. Yeah.
let's see what else. Does Joe like the dog? We couldn't really tell if Joe likes the dog. We know he's frustrated with the dog.
True.
And are there any particular incidents that are triggering the urination or the potty training lapses indoors? I mean, are these submissive urination type of things, or is it just because Joe has been home for hours and didn't put the dog out?
Now we're blaming Joe
you
again.
know.
Okay.
Or is it
Goddamn
a
Joe.
or is it a
Okay.
marking type of a behavior that's
Okay,
going on?
good. Good.
I think that's
These are all really, really good questions.
Really,
And-
was
and by
that was
way,
the other one. The other one was
Okay.
was Joe away when they picked this dog and brought the dog home?
Ah, okay. So was Joe even there when they got the dog? Before they sent it for training, who knows? I just have to tell you guys that I did this seminar over in England in September, and we did this case study, and I have to tell you that by the end of it, everybody wanted to lynch Joe. Poor Joe. And we had the same questions about, we'd like to know a little bit about what his relationship with Bonnie and what goes on. And so neutering Joe, which somebody suggested, not an option, okay? Number 3? Yeah. We can't hear you. Hold on. Okay.
Okay, so the other ones we had were if, we added the method of the training facility. We had that one.
Right.
And if anyone, who feeds the dog, we're assuming it's Bonnie, but who feeds the dog?
Okay, good
If
question.
Smudge is spayed. And then if Joe has any particular features that are kind of unusual, is he very loud?
Like
Is
big
he...
pointed horns?
Yeah. Is he loud? Does he wave his arms around a lot? Is he a smoker? Does he smell unusual? Something about him that might trigger the dog to
Joe.
not.
You have the point
Joe
horns that
again.
he smells unusual. Okay. No, that's a good point, though. But you know what? She makes a very good point. There may be actually a smell that's on Joe that the dog is afraid of, for all we know.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It could be something else that's true. Not Joe himself, but something he's
Yeah, who
wearing,
knows?
the way he looks, the way
Because
he
when
walks.
he does that machine work, you
Right.
can pick up smells. It's true.
So I think that's all we had that wasn't already covered.
Okay, good. You guys all had really good questions. And I want you to know that you're coming up with stuff that those people in England did not come up with also. Okay? I mean, they were really good too, but you've got other questions that I did not hear there.
Well, lucky for us, we're number 4, and all of our answers were answered by you
Well,
guys.
don't worry, because we're going to start with you on the next question.
Oh boy,
So-
can't wait. But I guess it was mentioned in here, but it doesn't really say how scared. It says she was a little scared of men when she went to the training facility.
Right.
But it seems that she's really scared of Joe, so just curious
Yeah.
of who was she originally scared of? Was it the people who came and fed her, what
Yeah.
that person looked like, what
Yeah,
they
you guys
did,
said
and
that
how
too.
that resembles Joe in any way?
That's a good point. Or, it may have been because we know a lot of rescue workers are women, And what if it was really that for the first 8 months of Smudge's life, that's all she saw were women. She never was around men, perhaps,
Plus,
right? And
you
then she
never
went to a
know.
rescue group that was women,
Right.
right? So that may be as well. Good question.
Or you never know, also, abandoned pups for 8 months in a house, who came over and messed with them, kids,
Oh, exactly.
little
Exactly.
torture trips or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's sad, but it's true. So hold on to the mic. No. You're keeping the mic because now you get the chance to go first. So the next question is and this is something that we don't know for sure, okay? And this is going to be a quick one. What do you think might be at the root of Smudge's fear? We talked about root causes earlier in the day. Guesses?
Well, we pretty much all came up with the same conclusion. It was lack of socialization in
Yeah.
her early
Okay.
months.
Okay. Good. Yeah, very, very
And perhaps
likely.
unintentional negative activity that took place in the house.
Okay, good. Did you all have pretty much the same answer on that one? Did anybody else have anything to add to that? Because I'm going to kind of... Yeah, she's saying that German Shepherd. I happen to really love German Shepherds, just so you know. But yeah, it could be genetic. How do we know? So it's those horns, I'm telling you.
There was one other thing that we had written down, and that's
Yeah.
poor nutrition, which made just
Poor nutrition?
play
Okay,
a part
yeah,
in there
which
somehow.
I don't know if that would be totally the cause of it, but certainly didn't help.
Right.
That's absolutely for sure. Good. Okay, so why don't we just skip to the next question and give it to group 3? And this one, is there anything that the family has done, that means anybody in the family, okay, not just Joe. Is there anything that the family has done or is currently doing that is either hurting or helping the situation? I'm sorry, wait.
It's Joe again. Yeah.
It's Joe again.
Yes, he's
so
yelling.
what's Joe done now?
Yeah, he's yelling and staring at the dog.
Well, yeah, that's a really obvious one, right? He gets upset, and what does he do? He yells and he stares, which is obviously making Smudge more scared, right?
And then the other one we had was the low quality food.
The what?
The low quality food.
Yeah, they could certainly be doing better on that, right? But again, they are trying to do what the rescue told them to do. They think they're doing the right thing. You know, I really want to emphasize this. These people are asking for help. They are trying to do the right thing. Okay, and Joe's probably paying for the training.
And she reminded me also letting him be free, running around at night and sleeping in the bedroom at night and being free, that's maybe just doesn't help when Joe gets up in the middle of the night.
Yeah, how many of you had that? Okay, because let me tell you, that should not be happening. Okay,
and
there's no reason, if the dog is comfortable in the crate, my recommendation was actually that they bring the crate upstairs and they have the dog sleep in the crate by Bonnie's side of the bed. So Bonnie's happy, the dog's happy, it's near her, but it's not, and there was no more problem with Joe getting up after that. There still could have been, but there wasn't.
I did miss one on number one was if there's any way we knew what how the other puppies were doing, if they were also fearful and stuff.
Yeah, we don't know about the other puppies in that litter, okay? If they've all got the same thing, again though, it could be genetic, but it also could be lack of socialization because they all had that same rough start, right? So good answers. And group 2, family that's hindering or helping.
Right,
Question
question 3. We had a hard time looking at positive things they were doing, except maybe the walking. The 45-minute
walking
walk
is
was good,
definitely
and
positive.
including the family and the kids on those was really good.
Calling the trainer, seriously.
Really calling you
Okay,
was...
they are asking for help.
Oh, that's right. And then besides the low quality of the food, it was the leaving the food available to the dog
Yeah.
for whenever the dog decided she wanted it.
Yeah, it's not a great idea to be free feeding her. Okay, good. Anything else?
That's pretty much.
Okay. And group 1, did you have other ones to add to that? Yes?
Number 3, anything that the family has done is currently doing that is either hurting or helping the situation. We think that the dog needs to have more stimulation. The 45-minute a day walk is good, but it's not enough.
Not enough?
And-
So what would you have them do?
Twice a day, 45,
Okay.
45, 90.
Okay, more exercise.
Or play ball. I mean, that's kind of, I don't know, if it's raining,
Yeah.
I guess you can do that once, but... and of course, I think somebody already mentioned the style of reprimand that Joe has.
The style of reprimanding that Joe
Right.
has, yeah? Yeah, definitely not helping the situation. The staring down and all of that.
We definitely thought that Joe should have a more positive interaction, perhaps take place.
Okay, now that's going to be in the recommendations.
Oh, okay.
Let's actually...
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm reading the wrong one.
Okay, so actually, I think we're gonna put a couple of these questions together in the interest of time. So we want to know, and you can combine your answers from these two. We want to know basically what is your first priority, how might it be accomplished, what, if anything, would you change about Smudge's daily routine, and let's just leave it there. And actually, let's just combine all three of these. And are there any specific techniques, because these are similar, are there any specific techniques or ideas you might suggest to make Smudge feel more comfortable with Joe? So we're going to have two questions here. What would you do differently? What's your first priority? And what would you change about the daily routine? That's going to be one. And then specifically, what would you do about Smudge and Joe? Okay? And we're going to answer both of those. As why don't you just go ahead?
Our first priority is management.
Okay.
They need to make several changes, including moving the crate upstairs, not giving Smudge free rein at night. They need to change the feeding schedule and probably improve the
Stop the free
nutrition,
feeding.
nutritional value, no free feeding. They need to, we think that what may happen, because Joe's so frustrated with the dog.
Now that's
is,
a part of the prognosis.
well,
Okay.
but in terms of how to accomplish things, how to get
Right.
things done, is that by improving the management, Joe's sleeping through the night, he's not getting barked at, he's going to start yelling less.
Good point.
He may
There
find
will be
things
less
he actually
stress.
likes about the dog more.
Good point.
You know, and so...
So we're going to lower Joe's stress levels.
We're going to
as
lower
much
his
as we
stress
can.
level to make him able to
Yeah.
work with the dog more. And did you say you wanted to combine the rest of
And then, what specific suggestions are you going to make?
and
Yeah,
ideas?
absolutely.
Well, we know Joe travels a lot, but when he's home, we think that he should be hand feeding Smudge.
Okay, if Smudge will take the
if
food.
Smudge
Because
will do
remember,
it.
Smudge will not even eat if he's in the house at this point.
Okay,
So
so,
that-
well, maybe giving, well, how do you do a 2-week, he's getting an automatic 2-week break. Smudge is getting that
Right.
2-week distance from Joe, so when Joe comes back, one of the people here in our group had a great idea, which was your glove idea, is that not only would Bonnie be using the glove with her scent and then giving it to Joe when Joe returns so
Very
that he
good.
can do that, but he should also use it, and then Bonnie can share his scent with Smudge while he is gone.
Yeah, very
So-
good.
So that he kind of is
you
present
guys
all
all
the
good?
time. And that,
That's actually
since-
very similar, by the way, to something that I suggested they do. So I'm really glad to
Oh,
hear you
good.
say that, and I'll tell you.
and then
Go ahead.
also since Smudge is comfortable with a leash, dragging a leash in the house, that's just one step away from a tie down, and giving Smudge a safe place where he can be in the midst of the family, maybe on a tie down where Joe can give some positive reinforcement in a really low key, non-threatening kind of way, like while they're watching TV or whatever.
Okay, I would be careful about the tie down, though, only
Yeah.
because then Smudge kind of has that fight or flight thing
Fight
going.
or flight.
Yeah, and I
Well,
don't want
maybe
Joe
just-
kind of approaching if Smudge really can't go anywhere.
Maybe just having the leash on then is,
Yeah.
since that's a comfort, seems to be a comfort issue. I'm not sure why.
You know, I
Maybe
just
you
want to
could
say
tell us.
something about the leash for a moment. This is not like a family I worked with extensively for a long time, but I am going to tell you that I had my questions as far as when Bonnie said, Smudge is okay if she's on a leash in the house or if she's on a leash with Joe, because there's a fine line between the dog is calmer and learned helplessness. You know? I don't know. In my opinion, the dog was kind of shutting down once she was on a leash from what I saw. And I know that's a hard thing to know without being there and seeing it, but it's something you always have to consider. Just because the owner says the dog is calm doesn't mean the dog hasn't just shut down. And that can look really, to an untrained eye, it can look very similar. Okay?
So we would have gotten that if we were observing. We
Yeah,
would have gotten
yeah, if
that
you were there, you
feedback.
would have seen it.
And then as hopefully the relationship improves, we'd like to see Joe being the one doing more play interaction with the dog, doing classes, training classes, and so forth with the dog.
Good. All really, really good answers. Okay, so she's going to associate Joe with good things as Smudge gets more comfortable. I know. Okay.
We thought our first priority to be that we need to find out what is the commitment that Joe and the rest of the family has to keeping the dog and working with the dog.
Okay.
Because at this point, maybe he's not wanting to do that.
Yeah, is Joe really willing to do this?
Right.
Okay.
And of course, educating them to the process of it's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to take a while for this to turn around, and just finding out where he's in all this.
Okay.
And then we also comment on the idea of the high-value stuff that Joe will get to do.
To get associated
Maybe
with
there's
the
a
good
really
things.
important toy that only comes out when he's around,
Yeah.
or special treats.
Absolutely.
And pretty much the rest was being said already.
Okay, good. Good answers. Yeah, absolutely. Associating Joe with good things is definitely going to be part of this treatment plan.
I think everything was covered. We had the same thing with, you had like special Joe treats, that suddenly a big treats bill came when,
Okay.
of just
Special
special
Joe
treats,
treats.
that only came out when Joe was there. And, basically the same thing. Joe has to stop yelling and staring at the dog, and he should start taking the dog to training classes and teaching the dog and not have Bonnie there when he's at training class.
Okay.
And then we're assuming that if they're feeding them low-quality food, they're probably not feeding them high-quality treats, so cheese and
good
natural
point.
balance and things like that.
Good
and
point. Their
something-
treats may not be the
something
best.
smelly and liver treats and things like that. So,
Okay, good.
okay.
Good.
Well, the one thing we thought was really important is that Joe should probably be educated on dog language, dog body language, and
Okay.
how to properly assess what the dog is trying to tell him and how to respond to it.
Yeah, good point.
As
Good
opposed
point.
to-
Because who knows? Maybe maybe Joe thinks that the dog is just bad, or being stubborn, or having the potty accidents and everything else. Okay. And the last question on there. Why don't we start in the back there? Actually, group 4. Hello. Why don't you start this last one? Okay, what is your prognosis, and is there anything that gives you hope that this issue can be resolved? And if you don't think it can, that's okay too. I want to know really what you think.
As long as
Neuter
the whole
Joe.
family is willing to come together with a plan and be consistent with it, we think that
There's hope.
there's hope.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we also thought it was good. Obviously, we had the commitment of the family, particularly Joe, on making
Okay,
the
so
dog
if
come
the
around.
family's committed.
And then we thought it was good because the male the man at the facility, the training facility, was able to get through to the dog. So if it is sort of a man fear, then the fact that the man at the facility got through, then we
Yeah,
kind of
that's
felt
a good point.
that
Okay.
Joe could get through.
Good point. So yeah, if Joe has a fear of all men, at least the people at the training facility were able to help, right? To a point. We don't know exactly to what point, though. Okay?
The process depends on the family commitment and education.
Yeah. I think that really sums it up, doesn't it? I mean, and especially Joe in particular. Did you have another? Okay, her question is basically, was there a level of commitment when I first came in? Not from Joe. Joe, remember, wanted to get rid of the dog right away. So he was not like, okay, if this is going to work, I'll do whatever it takes. That was not his attitude at all. Bonnie's, yeah, definitely. And the kids love the dog, of course. But yeah, I did not really get that from him, unfortunately. And did you have anything to
But
add?
our point on that would be Bonnie may be the one who initially went in wanting to make it work.
Yeah,
But
Bonnie made the appointment.
Joe's the bad guy in here so much,
Yeah.
but Bonnie's the one who is going to have to really change her attitude about working with the dog. Bonnie's the permissive parent and is probably, she's there 24/7. He's on the road.
Right.
And
so how do you feel
she's,
that Bonnie's being permissive?
well, she's established a routine for the dog, and she has to be willing, and maybe she is willing, hopefully she is, to get the dog out of the bedroom, to change the feeding schedules, so she has to be willing to budge on this,
Yeah, no, I agree.
whatever
I mean, she's
she's
with the
got
dog
in
most of
place.
the time.
She's got a
gonna have to.
routine now,
Yeah.
so she's going to have to sway a little bit in order to make it work, because we asked ourselves whether Bonnie sides with the dog or with Joe. When Joe gets frustrated and yells, is Bonnie coddling the dog, or is Bonnie talking to Joe about, toning it down, and
Right.
this is what we're going to work on.
Okay, so good answer, really good answers from all of you guys. Did you have a question? Because I'm going to tell you what I did. Yeah, hold on, microphone coming.
I just wonder if, this is something that just occurred to me while she's describing this, if Joe is made, not in a patronizing way, but if he's really made part of the solution very clearly, where he feels part of the team, saying,
Right.
look, in order for this to work, it's really important that you, Joe, blah, 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 blah. And I think what happens, sometimes people feel shut down or that they're not part of the process, so they're not willing to really invest personally. Not only the family, but each member needs to do that. So I think I agree with what you're saying, but I think he definitely needs to feel that he's definitely part of the solution.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And that's why I was saying earlier that, so a lot of times when you're the person that's on the outside, I mean, you feel terrible. You're like, what's wrong with me? The dog doesn't like me. So yeah, everybody, bottom line, everybody's got to be part of the solution here. So I'll tell you the things that I advised this family. The crate thing. I wanted the crate to be moved up to the bedroom for nighttime, or get a separate one, whatever, so that there was no more boofing and so forth at Joe during the night, because I was frankly afraid that was going to escalate into something else, and it wasn't good for the dog either way. Something that none of you mentioned was there was a bit in there about the dog, when it's left with Joe for just even a couple of hours, has potty accidents. And Joe gets really angry and goes off on the dog. I suggested that Bonnie crates the dog before she leaves. So then Joe is not in the position of having to watch that dog and having to yell at the dog when the dog has accidents and that whole cycle. There's no reason. It's only a couple of hours. The dog can be in the crate. I wanted Joe to actually ignore Smudge. Obviously, I wanted him to stop the yelling and the staring, right? Bonnie and Joe, I would like them to take the walks together as much as possible. And if that means that, Joe is pushing the stroller, for the 2.5-year-old, and Bonnie is walking Smudge, they can do that. Okay, Bonnie can be the one actually walking him. I just want Joe to be present. I really want Joe to be present for anything that dog likes. Okay? I would like that dog to get like a shower of cheese or hot dogs or anything else when Joe is present, when the dog makes any positive move towards Joe. Yay, cheese! Okay, we love Joe. Okay. Also, and you guys in this group sort of touched on this with the scent and the glove, right? I like to use all the dog's scents as much as possible in creative ways, and senses, not scents. And one of the things is I thought Bonnie could actually wear Joe's clothing around the house so that the dog got more used to Joe's scent while he was away. Okay? And I know you guys are going to laugh just like the people in England laughed, but when they go, you've said something naughty, do you realize that? What I'm saying here is Bonnie is tossing the ball, right, for the dog, and he likes that. I want Joe to handle the balls. And yes, I know I'm saying something naughty. I want Joe, you should have seen the whole room full of people go, okay, they're tennis balls, people. I want Joe to get his hands on the balls. Maybe it would de-stress him. I want him, well, since she really likes that, seriously, because then when Bonnie is throwing them, at least Joe's scent is on there. It's somehow associated with him, okay? So, handling the balls will relieve Joe's stress, yes.
His shirt maybe on a favorite spot where Smudge likes to.
You're ahead of me, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because rather than wearing the,
Yes, absolutely. She said rather than wearing, could you? Yes, and I do. I actually told her to put something that Joe has handled, whatever has his scent on it, near the dog's food dish, okay, and near whatever it was the dog likes, near his like resting area. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because again, it doesn't have to be where Joe is there. It's better if Joe's not there. Okay. I would anything could happen, and maybe he does. I don't know what goes on with the two of them. Yeah, or it could be even just like strips of cloth. The other thing is the sense of hearing. We can make a recording of Joe's voice, and what I wanted them to do actually was play that recording before all the good stuff. So here's Joe's voice going, hey, how's it going, Smudge? And then we're tossing balls, and then we're feeding the dog, and then we're taking the dog for a walk, whatever it is. Okay? So we're doing all the stuff about Joe when Joe is not actually there to kind of ease the dog into it. Okay? Obviously, classical conditioning. Joe enters the room, cheese, cheese, cheese. Feeding, yeah, we definitely need to switch the feeding to twice daily. I would like Joe to prepare Smudge's food and for Smudge to actually see it. Okay? Even if the dog will not eat it, with Joe there, I want the dog to associate that. And furthermore, because, we're going to switch the kibble, obviously, to a better brand, but when Joe does the food, I want there to be something really good on it, like canned food on top of it, or Vita-Gravy, or whatever it is. And when Bonnie does the food, I don't want that thing on there. Okay? I want that dog to go, wow, the really good stuff comes from that guy over there. The one with the horns and the tail, The one who's been neutered. Okay. Again, they can leave the food down. They can leave the food down 10 minutes after that. I'm so glad you guys are still awake. I know it's hard. Okay. If it gets to the point where the dog is more comfortable in the room with Joe, then we can go to things like Joe actually kind of tossing the treats like we talked about for the visitors. Leadership program. Okay, I want the dog on a leadership program where the dog has to earn things. And again, we haven't touched on this, but we're about to. The DAP diffuser would be really good in the house. Maybe it'll work on Joe too, we don't know. T-touch would be a really good thing for this dog as well. Okay? This dog has a certain level of stress just from living in that home. That's kind of chronic, and I worry about that. Okay, except when Joe's gone, but then Joe's back, So that would help. We could also give the dog some rescue remedy, like 15 minutes before Joe's coming home. Wouldn't hurt. A little tequila, yeah. No, that's for Bonnie. Okay. That's right. And it does have an alcohol base. So, yeah, absolutely. If they do have a friend who has a dog that's friendly, which we talked about before, right? You can always bring that dog over and have that dog interact with just Joe there, so that Smudge sees he's really not that bad of a guy. And then once Smudge was more comfortable, we want to do some touch transfer techniques. I do want to show you guys, I'm just going to blow through some of this because I do want to show you. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Let me tell you the outcome while you're doing that. I hate to say this, but they did try this for a week or two. Bonnie was really into doing this. Joe was not so much into doing this, and they did end up giving the dog up back to a rescue. Well, hopefully not. I don't actually know who, but hopefully not. Yeah. So sad, but it's hard. Some people don't want to do it. So you can stay where you are. You can go back to your own seat, whichever you'd like. This is a video. I'm going to show you quickly.
Afraid of Cliff, Laura first is going to get him to do a touch with her. Now she would normally repeat that enough times until Stony is absolutely comfortable. And once he is, Cliff is going to put his hand underneath Laura's and she's going to do the touch. And Laura is asking for the touch. And Laura is also giving the reward, which is some lovely cheese. And we'll do that just another couple times, making sure that we're looking for signs of stress, such as lip licking, which he's doing a lot of anyway, but that's because of the cheese. Good. Once he's comfortable with this position, want to do one more, Stony?
Touch.
Good. Then we're going to switch so that Cliff's hand is over Laura's.
Touch. Yes.
Good.
Touch. Touch.
And you should not be
And if
bonking
he
the
doesn't
dog's
touch
hand.
right away, one thing they could do is they could both remove their hands and then place them back there again, which they're going to do now. Good. Now, only when Stony was completely comfortable at this step, and we'll do one more just to make sure. Good. They're also being careful so that when they present the hand, it's not coming down over Stony's head. Okay. And now, Stony is going to move a little bit closer around to the front of Laura, and she's actually going to be the one to lure him, not Cliff. And the dog can be lying or standing. Stony knows lay down, so Laura's asked him to. Good. Now, if there was trouble at this step, what Laura could do is ask him for a touch, but not so close to Cliff, but more in front of her. And Stony would most likely be more comfortable that way. She could slowly move her hand so that it is closer to Cliff with each repetition. And then, when Stony was completely comfortable, we could have Cliff's hand underneath as we started before. Stony is not a pit bull, he's a ham. Good boy, Stony. Okay, I'm going to do one more. And then, assuming Stony is comfortable, they're going to switch. Nobody asked you yet, Stony. So that Cliff's hand is over Laura's now, and it's down low, not above his head. Now, this would be a great way to teach him to target with his paw too. If they wanted to, they could capture that.
Alto, we can cut it there.
Good.
Okay. So, I'm just going to cut it there in the interest of time because I want to get to everything. But the rest of it basically is just teaching him to then touch Cliff's hand alone. Okay. This is really helpful also. If I've done this once where the dog was a little bit afraid of me, and he loved his dad, you know, and so I sat next to the guy, and we transferred the touch to me until the dog felt a little bit more comfortable with me, so side by side with the client. Okay. Yeah, good question. Yeah, she said, does Cliff ever end up giving him the treats? Yeah. The variables you can manipulate here are who's giving the command, the cue, and who's giving the treats. Okay, so you can very gently switch that over to the other person. Okay. Is that the dog's couch? That's a couch at a training center, actually. Yeah, it's just sitting at this training center that we shot at. I want to go through the stuff really quickly because I know we only have like 15 minutes. But dogs that are fearful of being handled, we've already done that slide on by. You saw that. I really like that technique. We know, there are so many root causes it could be. It may never have been handled much by the owners early on. Again, it may have pain in a specific area. Okay. If you're going to do counter conditioning, identify the area that the dog is sensitive in and start at the opposite end of the dog. Okay? Meaning you're going to do touch and treat and touch and treat and that sort of thing. Starting at the head, let's say, if the dog has a fear of the hindquarters. Okay? Also, it may be things that are specific, like hugging, patting on the head, having the collar grabbed. So make sure that you know exactly what it is that you're desensitizing the dog to, and basically start off very gently. Okay? You will see another video of how to do this. Precautions would be muzzle if necessary. Obviously, even though we want to keep the dog under threshold, stuff happens, and you're at very close proximity with the dog when you're doing this. So let's just look at the next video, actually, which is, this is to address fear of handling, and then we're just going to look very briefly at the transferring that to another person.
Like Laura's doing now. And then with the other hand, touch them in an area that is not going to be scary for them, such as the chest. And remove both of your hands at the same time. So the hand with the food is first, and then the petting, because the dog is chewing on the food at the same time, and then remove both hands. Now when you start this with a very fearful dog, of course, you're only going to be doing very brief, like 1 second, and then hands are removed. As the dog gets more comfortable, you can leave them there a little bit longer, and you can also start to pet on different places on the dog, such as the side of the shoulder. Anywhere that the dog is least sensitive. Once the dog is comfortable with this technique and you've moved on to various parts of his body, you can start to do touch first and then treat. And again, starting with the least invasive parts of the dog's body, such as the chest. So we touch and then the treat. And you'll notice that the treat is coming directly after the touch. She's not waiting a few seconds. And then, of course, she would do it on various parts of the body. And notice, too, that she's still removing both of her hands at the same time.
Okay. I'm going to skip the transferring this to Cliff, because basically it's the same type of thing that we saw with the touch. Okay? But I do want to go through the complementary therapies just really quickly, because I think that's important. We can have the lights back on. That'll be it for the DVDs. And fearful on walks, by the way, we pretty much have gone over anyway. The complementary therapies, how many of you are familiar with DAP? Okay, not a lot. Then I am going to go through this. DAP is short for dog appeasing pheromone. And what that means is it chemically mimics the pheromones that are given off by lactating female dogs, which is, of course, very comforting to the puppies, but it's also comforting to adult dogs. I think the only one it might not be comforting to is other lactating female dogs. Okay, which I actually had happen. Of course, I find the client with the lactating female dog. It comes in, it looks like a Glade plug-in. Okay, it's like a little diffuser that can be refilled. It also comes in a spray form, and now it comes in a collar as well. It's like a little canister that the dog wears on their collar. They're actually, here, okay, the scent is actually detected through the vomeronasal gland. And because the receptors in that organ are actually linked to the limbic system, which is the part of the brain, that controls the moods and the emotions, the molecules can actually affect the dog's behavior in times of anxiety. This can be used for dogs that are nervous when being left alone. Okay, dogs that have separation anxiety, for example. It's good for dogs who are nervous in specific situations. We've already talked about spraying it, okay, in a training area. You can spray it in the car for a dog who's afraid of riding in the car. Dogs who are, even dogs that have chronic stuff in the house, like chronic licking behaviors, I would say put a DAP diffuser in every room. Buster, that Cocker Spaniel that you saw, he really had a lot of different fears, and we put one diffuser downstairs and one upstairs, and she said that it was amazing the difference in that dog. I mean, when we hadn't done anything different, just that. Also, I had a client who had dogs that were two puppies that just had never been separated at all, slept in the same crate. We tried to separate them into different crates at night, and they would shriek. And they would shriek like all night long. And after like 3 days of them shrieking, they called me. I'm surprised they didn't call sooner. And I had them actually put the DAP diffuser down there, and they called the next day and they said, "Thank you, we slept last night." The dogs actually did do the shrieking thing for about 3 minutes, and then they settled down. Okay? It's not going to work with every dog, but it's absolutely worth a try. It's certainly not going to hurt anything. Okay? It's sold under the brand name Comfort Zone in this country. You can get it online. You can probably get it at your local pet stores also. If you Google it, it's Comfort Zone. You can also spray it on the dog's bedding for that comfort mat that we talked about. You can also spray it on the dog's collar or on a bandana for dogs who are nervous going on walks, right? And then take them out. Okay. Yes, question, sorry. Do they eventually get over needing it? It depends. I'm not saying that it's a substitute for behavior modification. I am saying that if a dog is sort of globally fearful and anxious all the time, it's a kindness, really. And I would say I would keep it going. It covers like a 500 or 600 square foot area, and it lasts for a couple of months before they have to refill it. So I would say if the dog is chronically globally fearful, yeah. If it's a specific thing and you're doing behavior mod, you can probably get rid of it after the behavior mod is successful. Okay? Much like pharmacological intervention. I do want to tell you, though, that with that DAP, that there was clinical trials coordinated by a French scientist where he had 11 investigators working in 4 different countries. They had 26 dogs that displayed problem behaviors when left alone. 20 had destructive behavior, 18 had excessive vocalization, and 12 of them house-soiled. In each case, they used the DAP diffuser, which was in the room where the dog hung out. By the end of the first week, the destructive behavior was down 27%. By the 28th day, the dogs showed an 85% level of improvement. Vocalization incidence decreased by almost a quarter in the first week, and after 28 days, there was an overall decrease in the barking of 72%. Okay, that's quite a bit. House soiling incidence reduced in half by the second week. After 28 days, down by 66%. So overall, at the end of this 28-day trial, 85% of these dogs were confirmed as either cured or improved. Okay. I'm sorry? That's the only change that they made. It was a clinical study, so they didn't want to have other factors in there. They also did a study, by the way, that was presented at the 2004 Symposium of Animal Behavior Research that involved using a gel form of DAP. And what they did was they gave it to veterinarians, and they had 2 control groups, the groups with the DAP on their hands and their groups without. And basically, to summarize, they had the owners rate how their dogs, on a certain scale, how they did with certain aspects of a vet exam. And then they had the vets also rate how these dogs did before and after, and some had the DAP and some didn't. And basically, the preliminary results suggested that the use of DAP during the vet exams definitely helped some dogs to feel calmer. There were always, regardless of what phase of the exam it was, there were always more calmer responses in the group where the vets had the gel on their hands. It's a great thing to put in a shelter. It's a great thing to put in a vet's office. I think all vets' offices should have them. Okay. I feel like I'm racing against the clock. Not everybody. Okay. We're on? Okay. I just really quickly want to mention Trish King's calming cap for those of you who are not going to be here tomorrow or those of you who are seeing this at home. Okay. This is great. I know that you guys use it at the shelter here a lot. I always say it looks like a little Speedo for dogs, but it goes over their heads, and it's quite entertaining. What it does, you can explain this. Could you yeah, you can come up here and talk about it if you like. Always good to be talking about the product in front of the person who invented it and knows way more about it than you do. But I will say that what it does is it kind of filters the dog's vision so that the dog cannot see things, the way they would without it. They can still see, though. And, it's like putting a hood on a falcon. It just calms them down. You can use this for things like nail clipping. It's really good for that. Dogs that are afraid of riding in cars, which I think is what Trish originally invented it for. Okay? Yeah.
I've got a model coming.
Oh, okay. There's a model coming. Trish is going to show you this.
Strider.
And I've already explained a little bit about how it works and filtering out the vision and useful for nail trimming and car rides, and it's a shepherd.
This is the reason there is one. Come here, Strider. Because he barked in the car all the time.
Oh, see? Hi, sweetie.
At other dogs. Strider,
come here. Favorite.
I have one with polka dots that I put him on the other day. Okay, hang.
I can hold the mic for you.
So they can see light and dark because there's only one level layer right over their eyes. and it just kind of tucks like this and then under their collar. They can take it off if they try, and you'll see it in just a second.
And can you tell them what this is useful for, Trish? That I may
So
have
this
missed?
is useful for, essentially, Strider, sit down. Okay, so as I said, the actual, he's not the only reason. The reason I invented it was because I had a client in difficult dog class who did really well in class and then would get in the car and bark all the time, all the way home to San Francisco. And so everything that was done was undone. And so I said, geez, if we could only kind of, she had a little convertible. So I said, geez, if only there was some way that we could get her to calm down in the car. So we used a scarf at first, and that worked. And then we used my mother-in-law's pajama top. And that worked pretty well, too. Just the sleeve, And what happened was she'd put the dog in there, and the dog would get upset for a little while. And then she'd kind of calm down. And then the next time she got in, she'd calm down faster. And the next time she got in, she'd calm down faster. And after a while, she just would get in, they'd put the cap on, she'd go to sleep. So that was the first thing. And then we found out that it was good for some other things as well. Predominantly, I've had some people who use it for separation anxiety, just to calm the dog down. Some people who use it for nail clipping, any kind of veterinary procedure, because dogs, you know how when the vet will come in and look at the dog and the dog freaks out. So it works nicely for that. And it's had actually the veterinary assistants, the vet techs, adore it because it really cuts down the amount of fear-based aggression. So as you can see, he just calms down and goes to sleep. It does take a while.
Yeah, and you're acclimating them to it.
Yeah, you
gradually.
acclimate. What I usually do is put it on them, give them something to chew on for a little while, take it away, take it off, and take the thing away at the same time. So after a while, they go, oh yeah, this thing means good things for me. And he likes his. I mean, as I say, he's got a polka dot one, so I'm sure that...
And where can people get a copy?
You can actually get them from Premier. Premier sells them online. We sell them here. But a lot of stores are carrying them now, and I think they're actually going to come in another color besides blue. But that's the calming cap.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Trish. And Strider. Okay, I know we only have a few minutes. Really quickly, anxiety wraps. I'm having anxiety. I don't want to trip over Strider. He's so calm. He's not going to leave. Okay, cool. Want to do a seminar with me, buddy? T-shirt wraps are the easiest wrap to get on a dog and the quickest. This is. Do we have our slide back? Okay. When you put a T-shirt wrap on a dog, you want to put it upside down. It actually fits a little bit better. This is that goofy-looking dog. This is a friend of mine. He's actually so cute. This is Buzz. He belongs to another trainer friend of mine. When you do the T-shirt wrap, basically any kind of wrap is going to be useful for dogs who are nervous around other dogs or people, certain environments. It works well for thunderstorms as well. I used to do this to Soko. Certain forms of handling, nail clipping, and so forth. You can have a complete outfit. You can have a calming cap and a T-shirt, okay? And maybe little booties. You can actually put any of these wraps on to do T-touch circles, okay, on top of it, or you can do ear slides while it's on. Again, anything should be introduced to a dog gradually. We're not just slapping any of this on a dog. As far as sizing, small dogs, you can use a kid's T-shirt. Medium dogs, I would say a medium to large adult shirt. And for really big dogs, an adult extra large. You have this in your notes, so don't be trying to draw pictures. This is just the T-Touch body bandage. If you have the book, the Help for Your Fearful Dog book, it's also in there. I did this with a client recently. Her dog was very afraid on walks. And I asked her if she had an ace bandage in the house. And so we just wrapped the dog really quickly, just like this. We did a half wrap. We took the dog back out, and the dog was way less fearful. It really does work. I know. Well, the theory behind it, I'm glad you asked. You know how swaddling calms infants? You know that with autistic children, they use things similar. You know, with cattle, you have squeeze chutes. As long as the dog feels uniform pressure, they calm down. No, it doesn't feel restraining to the dog. It's not like a hug, okay, which is a scary thing to a dog. Good point. And I will show you the last one, which is the anxiety wrap. And this is an actual product that you would purchase. You can Google anxiety wrap. This was created by Susan Sharp, who is a trainer and a T-Touch practitioner. And Trish had a comment?
You can also use backpacks, a well-fitting backpack.
Okay.
And sometimes that helps too.
Okay, so just as Trish is saying, you can use a well-fitting backpack to give that uniform pressure around. Okay, yeah, that's a good point too. That's a quick anxiety wrap, isn't it? That's great. Rescue remedy. Yeah, it is less embarrassing, and that's the thing. I mean, are you really going to take your dog all wrapped up in bandages outside? Seriously, you've got to think about it. Bye, Strider. Thanks for coming. I just want to wrap up by saying pharmacological intervention. Again, not something that I jump to really quickly, but with certain dogs who are just, globally fearful or so fearful while you're going through the behavior modification, it really can be a kindness. We do have short-term drugs for things like a car ride or thunderstorms. I really personally stay away from acepromazine. I've seen really bad things happen on ACE, particularly working with the wolves. It's kind of like the body, the mind is racing while the body shuts down, which is a really, really uncomfortable feeling. Okay? My rescue partner used to say it's like they're on a bad acid trip. I mean, it's just not a good thing. Short-term, usually benzodiazepines, Valium, Xanax, okay, are preferable to ACE. For long-term, we have the SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which include fluoxetine, which is Prozac, paroxetine, which is Elavil, and sertraline, which is Zoloft. These drugs may sound familiar because they're the same ones that are given to people. They're probably a lot cheaper for dogs, but they're the same ones that are given to people. I do suggest working with a vet behaviorist if you have a good one that you can work with. Write up a treatment plan, contact the vet, work with the client through. A lot of them do fax services where you can work with the client through them. The tricyclic antidepressants do what the SSRIs do, but they also work on the norepinephrine, the NE. Those include Clomicalm, the clomipramine, Elavil. And I just want to say that people are really, really afraid to put their dogs on drugs because they think that the dog is going to be like in a stupor. And that should not be the effect of any of these. It's not the effect when you give it to people, is it? Right? So you really want the dog to be, it's just, well, perhaps with some people it is, and then you change the drug. And it is the same thing with dogs as far as sometimes having to do different drugs until you get the right one. I know we're running over time and we're going to wrap this up. I just want to say, too, that the drugs need to be administered gradually. You're usually building up. So it's not like the dog is on drugs and the next day he wakes up all perky and happy and everything's fine. Okay? It can take, according to Karen Overall, I believe 6 to 8 weeks to really reach the full dosage. And you're going to wean the dog off the drug after the behavior modification is completed. So I do want to thank a couple of people. I want to thank Susie Yokomiso for putting this all together. I know how much that takes. I don't know if she's in the room, but thank you, wherever you are. And I'd like to thank Trish King and Marin for allowing me to speak here. And I'd like to thank the Tawsers for doing their fabulous job that they always do and helping me out. And most of all, I really want to thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope that this helps you and your dogs and your clients' dogs. Thank you.